channel you want last, because they know. We'll tell people to like and subscribe. Wow. Okay, so thank you for your patience, everybody. Next order of business is a presentation by Mr. Dale.
Okay.
Where should I stand?
Just on the.
Yeah, you're in the plane of view there.
Okay, this is good?
Yeah.
All right. So thank you for allowing me to come and visit with you this evening. My name's Dale Brialt. I'm the district superintendent at FEH BOCES. I'm happy to be back here. I got to meet some of you a few years ago when we did the superintendent search. And for those of you who I didn't meet, it's nice to meet you. I don't normally travel with a large entourage. I just happened to work out that way this evening. I've done about 6 of these presentations, and I always like to ask a few students. Lori Torville, who is assistant superintendent for instruction at BOCES, likes to join me when she can, just so that you can put a name with a face. And I do always like to thank the school board members or representatives from your community who serve on the BOCES board. And because by statute, it doesn't have to be one of your sitting board members to represent your district on the BOCES board. And in this case, we're so fortunate to have Peter, who represents your school community on the BOCES board. And I want to publicly thank Peter for volunteering to come back to the BOCES board. He served on the BOCES board several years ago. He's already proven to be an outstanding board member who is very interested in what we're doing and asks lots of questions. Just as a courtesy, I sent him an email a few days ago saying that I was going to be here, and he just offered on his own to say, hey, do you mind if you think it'd be a great idea if I showed up? So I really appreciate Peter showing up and just being a part of the presentation tonight. The whole purpose of me being here today is, it'll sound a little funny. I started as the district superintendent at FEH in January of 2020, but I'm now just getting back to some of my entry plan 3 years later. I started in January 2020, and one of my goals was to get out and start meeting with boards just so they knew who I was and what we did at the BOCES. And then we know what happened in March of 2020. So that kind of threw off a lot of my plans. And really, this is just me getting back out and doing some of the things I intended to do in the beginning. I wanted to talk a little bit about what my role is. I have a very unique role in the state. I am the district superintendent of the sole supervisory district of Franklin, Essex, Hamilton counties. That's actually a state education title. And I am also the CEO of the BOCES. That's more of what you would think of as the traditional superintendent. My role as the CEO is to run the actual programs at the BOCES. I oversee the instructional and the non-instructional side of the BOCES. And there's a part of the local budget at the BOCES pays for my salary to be the CEO. The district superintendent side, I'm actually appointed by the state education department as an official representative of the state ed department. And I not only get a paycheck from the state ed department as part of that role, but I get evaluated by the commissioner of education. In that role, that's really, so it's the best job I've ever had. It really is. I get to be involved in instruction on a daily basis, but I also get to do statewide work as part of the state ed department. And as part of that, I travel to Albany once a month and meet with the department representatives. And it's a two-way communication path between me and the state education department. We meet regularly with our local superintendents. We talk about issues related to the state. Oftentimes they will say to me, hey, Dale, next time you're in Albany, can you bring this up? And I try to represent the best interests of our region when I'm at the state, and vice versa. The commissioner will have certain initiatives that she wants us to make sure that we're putting out into the school community. So I bring those messages back to our local superintendent. So that's a little bit about the dual role that I have. It's actually a role that's been around since or the early 1910s, believe it or not, because back then you had thousands of little country schools and they needed some level of oversight. And that's when the district superintendent role was first created at the state level, to oversee a lot of the country schools out in the communities. But in 1948 is when they created the cooperatives, and it changed more into the model we're used to today. FEH was one of the first 3 BOCES in 1948 after the law was passed. to create the cooperative. So that's a little bit about my role. I have some notes here. I'll just make sure I'm not leaving anything out, but yeah, I think I went through most of that. I meet regularly with all of our regional superintendents and make sure that we act as that two-way liaison back and forth between the state. Couple other things just that I always like to try to do a little bit of education on when I can, when I'm in front of groups, is how a BOCES operates. I like to talk about the BOCES budget because it's very, very different than a school district budget. I was a school superintendent and a business official in Chattagay for a few years back. And, school district budget, I always think of it as your declining balance of your, when you went to college and you had your meal plan, you set an amount at the beginning of the year, that's all you had. And when you ran out, you were done. And that's pretty much how a school district budget worked. You set your, you have your public vote on your budget. That's the amount. And in only rare circumstances can you ever change that. A BOCES budget is vastly different. There's two parts of it. There's the administrative budget, which you vote on as one of the component district boards. Statutorily, that is your responsibility to vote on that, because when the cooperatives were created in 1948 and when a school district joins the cooperative, when you join that cooperative, you are now pledging to maintain at least a minimum amount of services to keep the cooperative going. So by law, you have to pay into that admin budget, but you do have a voice in voting on the admin budget. What's the admin budget? It's the light and heats of the buildings that we own. There's also the capital component of that admin budget, which BOCES can't do building projects nearly as easily as school districts. We did just complete one, but it's very complex to actually get that authorized. So you pay into the admin budget, the capital budget, which allows us to do regular maintenance on the buildings. And then the general positions for the oversight of the BOCES, like my local salary, portion of Lori's salary. We have another assistant superintendent for operations. Her salary's in there. And then, what you would expect, my secretary, parts of people who do payroll, accounting, business office stuff. Those are all part of the admin budget. So that's what you vote on every single year as a board, are the bare minimum to keep the BOCES operational, just from an operational standpoint. The other portion, and so that is more like a traditional school budget. It's a set amount, you vote on that, that's the amount that we have. The other portion of the BOCES budget, the much larger portion, is the operational budget. And oftentimes people say, well, why don't we get to vote on that? But you actually do, you vote with your feet. You choose to either participate in BOCES programs by sending kids to some of the programs we have, or participating in some of the non-instructional offerings that we offer, like, we do business office support, professional development, things of that nature. And I always say you vote with your feet. So you can either choose to participate in those things or choose not to. And if you're not, then we better question what we're doing and whether we need to change that or not. But if you are participating, that's how we keep that that operational side of the budget going. And what makes that very different from a school district is we call it more of a spending plan. We take a look at what everybody spent last year and we say, okay, we think that's what we're going to spend this year. So we create a spending plan. We do put a dollar amount on that. And that dollar amount will never be the same after July 1 of each year. It typically grows throughout the school year because school districts will sign up for different levels of service, either through us or with other BOCES that then goes through a cross contract back through us. And so that's the other side of the BOCES budget. So just a brief education. If you ever wanted to talk more about that, I can get into a lot more detail, but I think it's important that boards understand that a BOCES is a bit of a different animal. At the end of the day, though, we are a zero-based budget. BOCES levies no taxes. We have only a handful of grants that we operate with. Everything we do is with your money, with component district money. And at the end of the year, any money that's unspent goes back to the component districts through the form of surplus refund. And I brought a handout here. I left some with Karen. You don't need to hand them out now. That's my, I used to be a teacher. I didn't hand things out when I'm talking about them because then you're looking at that instead of paying attention to me, but I'll leave them with you when I'm done. But this shows, this is just a basic chart that shows BOCES expenditures for Lake Placid. Now, this is a 2020-21, so this is almost a year old. We're about ready to put this year's versions of these out because, as you know, BOCES aid lags a year. What you spent in 2021, it's not until around December of the following year that we have the final accounting of how all of that expense plays out. But kind of a nice, neat little chart that says in the 2021 school year, Lake Placid spent about $1.3 million in BOCES expenditures. So, and that's broken down, you know, your administrative budget, your educational services, which is obviously your largest expense because you're sending kids into programs, and some other things here. So you spent $1.3 million. Revenue generated, and we talk about that in terms of revenue because it is revenue. Your BOCES aid in the following year, it generated 376, you know, close to $400,000. So your net expense on 1.3 million was $942,000. And in that year, you also received a BOCES surplus refund. So we said we're zero-based at the end of the year because we're a cooperative. We're in general municipal law as a cooperative. Anything we didn't spend goes back to the districts. There's formulas that calculate that. Received almost an additional $100,000 back in the form of surplus refund. So, you know, your total expenses on $1.3 million were $844,000. Now, Lake Placid is a very property-rich school district. So the way the state calculates aid ratios, you're at a minimum aid ratio for BOCES. And oftentimes that's used as a, you know, I hear people say, well, we don't want to work with BOCES because we don't get any aid. But I would challenge you to find any other vendor and I don't like to think of us as a vendor, but oftentimes we do get compared to vendors. Find me any other vendor who's going to give you 30 cents back on the dollar of every dollar you spend, or more when you factor in the money you get back in terms of surplus refund. We're really, again, we're a cooperative. We're not a vendor. My paycheck doesn't change whether school districts do business with us or not. You know, although it may change drastically if I screw things up too much because I won't have a job. So, but you know, I just like to point out that's how the finances work at BOCES. It's actually relatively straightforward. We have all the same cost drivers that you do: health insurance, retiree health insurance, ERS, TRS. You know, this year because our programs are so supplies and materials rich, you know, think about it. When you're running a full culinary program, you're buying food products on a daily basis. So the level of inflation that we've seen in the last couple of years has really hit our programs hard. And, you know, this year's budget, for example, we've had to up our supplies and materials budgets considerably just to keep the same level of programming. But that's the beauty of a cooperative. When you know, these two gentlemen are going to talk about natural resources in a second. You know, buying things like skid steers and portable sawmills and things like that would be next to impossible for individual school districts to do. It's very expensive equipment, but by joining forces with other school districts through a cooperative model, that's how we're able to do things like that you wouldn't be able to do otherwise. So I'm a firm believer in the model, or else I wouldn't be standing here talking to you. Last thing I wanted to just mention are just some demographics on the BOCES profile. This is in your handout as well. This is a sheet we created at the beginning of the year, so it's actually a little outdated, but there's 541 students currently enrolled between our two BOCES centers. We also have satellite campus at Salmon River with an HVAC and a welding program. Some things I'd love to see if we can get started in this area because we have people lining up at graduation trying to poach kids right out of the program. 183 of those 541 are at Adirondack Ed Center. That's one of the biggest enrollments we've had at Adirondack Ed Center in a long time. 312 students at North Franklin. We have, this is an old number, it says 29 remote. We're close to 100 students in our remote program right now. And we are phasing out a P-TECH program. We still have 17 students in the P-TECH program. We offer 14 CTE program, 14 programs in career and technical education and in New Visions. We work with over 110 business consultant advisors, and we have over 379 named workplace placement for our students throughout the BOCES. So those are partnerships with local businesses where we can place students for their work experiences. On the non-instructional side, we currently have 12 districts in our labor relations service. So we are doing like contract negotiations and, we assist with employee issues and things like that. We have 7 districts in our dedicated HR service, 11 districts in our shared business office program right now. And if you look at all of the money we have impact over with these non-instructional services, we're at like $350 million of finances that we're helping to manage for these 11 districts in our shared business office. And we like to think that these shared business and labor services are impacting over 14,000 students with all of the districts that we're serving. So little tiny BOCES, but we're doing some really interesting things. That's my presentation. I just wanted to, again, this is educational. I'd like to visit once a year and highlight maybe something a little different. But really, we're a line item in your budget every single year. And I know that oftentimes, it can be a frustrating line item because there's, it's a sizable chunk of change. So I think it's always important that where is that money going? And I can't think of a better way than just having a couple students talk about their experience. You pay an additional tuition rate to send these 2 young men to the programs that they're attending. I thought you should hear from them how it's impacted their lives. Completely unscripted. I met with them this morning and said, gentlemen, thank you for agreeing to do this. This is unscripted. I just want you to talk about how the programs you're in has impacted your life. So Andrew Levinson is here with us this evening. He is a senior in the natural resources program, but he's also been a 3-year student in our PASS program. That's our alternative ed program and he can tell you a little bit about that. I don't need to tell you about it. So he's been in that program for 3 years. He's a senior in natural resources, and Foster Wood is also senior in natural resources. We did actually have Katie Corzin, who was going to join us as well. But she has a basketball dinner tonight, and I told her, if you can make it, great, but don't miss your basketball dinner. So, but just why don't we have Foster go first? Again, completely unscripted. I don't know what they're going to say. I just wanted them to tell you how the programs are impacting them. Maybe stand where I am so moms at home can see you.
So I've been taking natural resource science for 2 years, my 2nd year. And the big thing that I love about BOCES is it gives me work experience at school. So when I go to normal school, I kind of just get the classes done. You don't actually learn how to work with people. You don't really learn how to do certain things like our natural resource program. We learn how to run chainsaws. We learn how to operate machinery. One of our new things, we're going to learn how to tap trees and all that. That's useful skills that we can use in the future that we're learning at school. So it's helping us because I don't have to go to another school, which I have to pay a lot of money for, just to learn how to do these basic things. And I'm also in the position right now where they are helping me figure out what I'm going to do on the next steps, how I can get there. They're helping me talk to people. I want to become a New York State Forest Ranger is my big thing right now. And being in this program has allowed them to connect me to these opportunities to get to the next level out of high school, which is amazing.
Thank you. Andrew, you want to say a few words? Mom's at home, so stand right
here. I first want to thank you guys all for speaking here today and being here because this is really interesting to be talking to the board. You guys make all the big decisions. You're the big shots. You guys know all the knots. I'll touch more on PASS program because Foster touched more on natural resource science. I joined PASS program in 10th grade because I couldn't sit in a classroom and in class of 20 kids and stare at a whiteboard. I just couldn't. My little antsy self couldn't stand in a seat or sit in a seat and look at a whiteboard. And I love the way PASS is more of a one-on-one with the teacher. Our PASS program has, in my grade, it's 8 kids in it, 6 to 8 kids. And so it's a really one-on-one with the teacher. You learn a lot more. They're a lot more in depth with their learning. And I'll touch on natural resource science too, because I just have to. And I like natural resource science because it gets us outside. It's not just taking the math you do on a board, like square footage or area. it actually, you do the math on the board and you go outside and you use it. Like I remember my first time ever touring BOCES. I sat down in Mr. Whistler's class and he was doing how many trees can you put in a 10 by 10 area on 100 acres? And I had no idea. And he was like, you want to try it out? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. And it just clicked. It clicked that I could take something on a piece of paper and envision it and think about an area of woods and what you can do, where you can put it. So it made me think outside of just what was on the paper. It made me think of real world applications and what you're really doing, why you're really sitting here doing all this work and what it leads you to. And I think that really helped me a lot. And I think why I like school. Like I love Lake Placid and I loved everything, but I think without BOCES, I wouldn't be in school anymore because they made me love learning. They made me engaged in the learning process. I really give you guys all for that. Thank you. And we all-
Now informally, who's known as the mayor.
Yeah.
Maybe see me on the news.
He was on the news recently, so he's always greeting people in the office and, so.
Hey. Andrew, or I was gonna say, this is Mrs. Skufka, Colleen Skufka. I remember you as that antsy 7th grader. It's so awesome to hear. I really remember how you couldn't sit still in some classes. And this is so cool to see how you've grown and developed. Kudos to the program and you. So that's awesome.
Thank you, guys. This is
Thank you.
Thank you.
You know, I appreciate these two young men just giving up a little bit of their free time in the evening to join me here tonight. So thanks to them. But that was, I just wanted to just give a broad overview. Again, I don't want to make this a one and done thing. I'd like to come back each year and just talk about something a little different. And of course, if you ever have any more detailed things you'd love to hear about or discuss or ask questions about, you know, just ask Tim to reach out to us. We're always willing to schedule time to come to a meeting and discuss things in more.
Is the
Yeah.
HVAC available for students from this school?
I mean, theoretically it would be, but it would be so hard to get students
Yeah.
up to Salmon River.
Yeah,
But, you know, we are,
that's real big demand. Big
Oh,
demand
I-
for that. Yeah.
well, it's interesting. Was it you, Peter, that had a problem with your furnace about a
Oh,
month and a
yeah.
half ago? And it was one of our young ladies who just graduated from our program last year who showed up at his house.
Excellent.
Awesome.
This is awesome. It is awesome.
We are looking at ways to increase program here if possible. Our center is filled, you know, it was built, but that, you know, there's no reason why we can't have conversations with our component school districts about space. You know, we were able to start the New Vision education program in the South End this year by not only partnering with Saranac Lake to use space in their building, but also we're contracting with them to be the teacher of the program. So Lori and I are really trying to bring some outside of the box thinking to increase programmatic opportunities, because we would love to see more trades programs in the South End for sure. Well, welding and HVAC are high on the list because they're both high demand trades.
Yep.
You know, but we're also pretty saturated with your students already. So
I know.
yeah, so but we're always looking for ways to increase that if possible.
That's great.
Any questions?
Yeah, thanks for having us this evening.
Thank
Really
you.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Hey, the next order of business is for the good of the cause. We have the emails.
No. And I checked.
School board. Let me share that part. No, maybe one other person. Being
Just
throwing their hat in the ring. Well, I mean, other than Doug. But. President company. All right, discussion section. Volunteer firefighter, ambulance worker, veterans, partial tax exemption. we want to kick this off?
Yes, so I do have a visual here. It's also in board docs too, but it thought it'd be a good way to kind of anchor the conversation. So I'll just share the screen. All right. Hopefully you can see that this bar is perpetually in my way when I don't want it to be, but it's set here. All right. You see that all right, Colleen's?
Yep. Yes.
So yeah, basically the reason that this topic is coming back up has a lot to do with recent law passages at the state. So the veterans exemption, real property tax law, section 458. This is an older law, but you know the changes that were proposed to provide this exemption for qualifying veterans, it will take effect April 1st. So if the board was interested in participating, either signing Lake Placid up effectively in either of these exemptions, the veterans or the volunteer exemption, there are certain required steps. So a public hearing would need to take place prior to resolution. And after that public hearing, the resolution, if it were passed by the board, would take effect. But you'll note that in the volunteer exemption, there's specific provision about application based on when the resolution is passed. So because this is applicable now with the other exemption, I believe it's March 1st that we have to lodge our intent so that the Office of Real Property can take that into consideration for doing the work. But in general, basically the exemption is 15% of an assessed value, an additional 10% exemption for a veteran who served in a combat zone. So according to the Essex County Real Property Tax Services, there are presently 169 parcels within our district that qualify for the alternative veterans exemption. So that one's been, I know, certainly something the board has discussed prior to my arrival, but it's coming up obviously in part because of the second exemption that is for the board's consideration. And just to show you, this would be the actual form that a veteran would complete, and any participating municipality or school district in this instance, you know, they would effectively receive the 15% off of their exemption, recognizing that someone has to carry the load. And so that would fall upon non-exempt taxpayers to varying degrees. The second exemption is the newer one, and this is the firefighters and volunteer ambulance workers. So this became effective in December. And what really sort of brought this back to the fore for our district is a conversation that Mindy Godot, the treasurer for the village, put forth, because the village has indicated an interest in participating in this specific exemption. And just like the other one, public hearing is required. And then following that, if the board were interested in moving forth with the exemption, then it's passage of a resolution. And this is for 10% of the assessed value of the home of a participating voluntary ambulance service worker, fire worker, rescue worker. And these numbers are a little more hard to pin down because each municipality, each township has different departments. So that isn't maintained at the county level. But this is just something I was mentioning. The form must be completed by March 1st of the relevant tax year. So effectively, if the board had any interest in proceeding with either of these exemptions, it'd be a discussion essentially for next year. So just possible next steps. As a board, you could decide whether or not it would be meritorious to hold a hearing and elicit public comment and have that hearing be the basis for consideration. Obviously, it's a requirement. So if any exemption is going to take place, our public hearings are not as well attended as the ballot box. to a significant degree. So I think if the board is interested in taking the pulse of the public, provisions on the ballot where voters would indicate their desire as to whether or not we should opt into this, that would be the most democratizing way to do it. And of course, another option could simply be to table the discussion and see how this unfolds, see if other municipalities take this on. But at some point, if the board ever decides to opt into this on behalf of the district, it will have an impact on the public. And so I think the hearing is there in recognition of that, but certainly having a provision, referendum provision would be an opportunity to post the question out there.
Hey, Tim, is there any type of a dollar figure that's been calculated yet? If I think it was 169 or something that are under the veterans category? As to,
By that,
No, we weren't given any names. We were just given a number. So we would actually have to look at 169 different property values to see, and not knowing their case, it could be anywhere from 10% to 25%, depending on whether that person for the veteran served in the combat role or not. So it is a hard number to figure out just because of the nature of the number of people.
So the application, someone has to say, I am a volunteer fireman and this, and then I was in my name. That's how the application goes, I suspect.
It looks like, yeah, that's, you kind of have to attest to it.
So it can
Verify.
be a combat veteran and a fireman.
yes, you could if both.
You could
I
add-
would say in theory, yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, in terms of going forward, I think it makes most sense to put it on the ballot and see if that's the best way to hear from the public, in my opinion.
It would be the public that's shouldering
Yes,
the balance, really. I mean, we're gonna have to have the public meetings anyway,
anyway, Yeah.
so. All right,
I mean, that's just a way of getting a pulse of the community.
yeah, I
I
mean,
personally favor it, but I don't know what the community feels.
sure. Well, yeah, and it's also hard to tell because, you think, well, yes, we have veterans who need to make every penny count that are either retired or, but then you also have some very wealthy veterans.
Absolutely.
That may have a lake house and suddenly are getting a 25% discount on their school tax. And that could be a significant burden to the taxpayer.
Yeah.
So,
I
Yeah.
think it would be great for maybe for all parties involved, but look at our volunteer firemen and our ambulance drivers. They get nothing. There's nobody, there's nothing, that anybody's offering them for anything. And I definitely think that that's one category that is very deserving. Not only our military, but our veterans, but definitely the volunteers on our ambulance and fire crews.
I agree with you. Yeah.
do they have to apply to that every year? Is that how that works, do you know?
I think so.
Because they would have to show that
I'm
they're
not sure of
active,
that.
right?
I think so. Most exemptions you have to apply for.
What's star rating?
I think that John Anthony looks at all of it. I don't know if he doesn't. Because if you no longer qualify, you can't have it.
Right.
So it says, once the exemption is granted, the exemption may continue for the authorized period, provided that the eligibility requirements continue to be satisfied. So it sounds like once you're in, provided that, obviously, if you're a veteran, you're always a veteran, but if
Sure.
Yeah,
you're a volunteer,
all right, that's a little different.
that's a little bit different.
Yeah, and with the one for the volunteer ambulance firefighters, that's an active role that they carry.
Yes,
It's not just something that happens in the past,
I agree.
but something they do on a continual basis. But I think either way, I think it would be good. And maybe we'll find out from the public meeting next wants to decide on it. But I think either way, that does sound like maybe taking it to a vote is the best way forward.
So you have to have the hearing and the vote?
Yes,
Yeah, we would have to have we have to have the hearing regardless.
regardless.
And then
Would you
can we do?
Would you
both
do
at the same-
would you do the vote as the trigger for the hearing?
in effect.
Oh,
To look at the vote as a board, we decide based upon that, the vote, let's have a public hearing or not have a public hearing. We decided that.
well, but if the public votes on it though, then it passes, correct?
No,
No, it's just, should the district opt into this? And if the district's comfortable moving with what the electorate says, then you just move through the procedural motions. Which in this case is you're holding the hearing and even if people say something, against the bulk, like you say, well, the majority of the electorate, they'll definitely thank you for sharing, but we're committed
Still in the
to,
public hearing.
yeah. And then from there, a resolution 30 days hence, for the next applicable tax year.
But it's important to note that the board makes no decision until after the public hearing.
Correct,
Still, all options are open.
100%.
So the second word back here.
So would it go on this?
I don't know, timing wise, if it can, yeah.
Time.
Yeah, no, we totally do. So as you'll see later in the meeting, you're approving propositions to be put on the ballot. So we would have to just do that. So
That's
that,
on the 21st.
right, or actually the 18th, I think. No, the 18th is June.
So then, I can work with Douglas, make sure that the language for the.
You go with the language for the ballot.
Does it make more sense to have the public meeting first and then have the public vote?
That's certainly an avenue too. You don't have to have a, it's up to the board.
Right, well, I was just thinking that would be an opportunity to educate prior to the vote. But maybe that's not the way. I guess that's Douglas. Yeah. How we should do it. Gerhard.
I think it can go either way. The vote gives the board the direction. So you can go
Yeah,
through
you-
the process, or you can do the public hearing, just like with a budget public hearing. We have that to educate public on the budget before the vote.
Right.
I think it can go either way, but as Tim was saying, here you go. We're getting direction. Why hold a public hearing if in the end the public doesn't support it?
I think we're gauging the public's feeling about this. And the best way to get the most input is on the ballot.
Okay.
People might not come to the hearing.
Right.
A lot of people
It's
don't
an
go to
uncomfortable
hearings.
dialogue to have too.
Right.
We all have appreciation for our volunteers and our military. But people also have real financial constraints that could be offset by this exemption. So might be a way to anonymize feelings a bit more as well.
And part of the
Good
public
point.
hearing,
That's a
you
very
can
good
fall back on the vote saying that 80% of the public voted in favor of having these exemptions. That's part of the conversation in the public hearing.
And Tim just made a good point that I wasn't even thinking about. Many people might not want to speak in a public
Right.
hearing.
Right.
For a variety of reasons.
Well, and also, wouldn't that be a part of the, it would be included in the budget booklet somehow, so there would be information going out.
It would actually increase the,
I think if we put, as long as we were able to put out the information so that people could make more decisions, I think that's probably. All right, sounds good. All right, any other discussion? Or willing, stop producing so many combat veterans, entry and stop going to war. There we go, that's a little buzzword for the paper. All right, operations committee report.
Well, hopefully you had an opportunity to review the multitude of documents I have provided you. Couple things, highlight the first two really focus on looking at the potential of doing some auditorium upgrades. The first document is from AVL. They were a consultant firm that we had come in over the summer, do a review of our current state of the auditorium, and then say, based on that, here's what they're recommending in terms of work being done in the auditorium. As you can see, nowadays nothing's cheap. We're looking at approximately $750,000. Obviously, that's a projection because, you know, prices go up. We doubt any of these prices are going to go down from when this report was done back in July. But one of the things to kind of stress with this is the fact that with the capital project, we redid, you know, a good portion of the auditorium, the sound system, but at the time, the lights were on the list, but didn't make it to in terms of the final, you know, to do, you know, thinking cost wise and all that. But in reality, you're looking at the lighting system in our auditorium is truly near, in some cases, at the end or even beyond their life expectancy, to the point where if a bulb goes and some of our lights on the stage lighting, we can't replace that. Looking at, you know, obviously bringing it up to code and, you know, bringing in some more energy efficient lights, LED lights, this really highlights redoing the entire staging in terms of not only lights, but rigging. I mean, our rigging is so old that it was put in before they even, you know, it was coded. You know, the guy came in and says, what you're using as rigging for your lights, they were pre-code. Now there's a code, and they're obviously in violation of it. It's not like a building code violation. It's more like lighting and road and all that. Just like
saying Macbeth in the
yeah,
that kind of thing.
right. You know, and you know, in our light system, you know, in our house lights that are mounted to the wall in the auditorium, that is, you know, not the ideal spot for it, and that's where the motorized trusses come in. Having a motorized truss come from the ceiling that you can move up and down, it just becomes it's more efficient when it comes to it, and putting everything on programmable so that it's on par with our sound system, where, you know, once you get everything updated, you can run not only the lights and the sound off the tablets. Currently, our new soundboard allows that to happen. This would put it so that a person could be walking around the auditorium and controlling everything. We don't actually need to be up in the booth to determine the lights and all that. So,
Can I ask a question?
absolutely.
How do we go about getting a price from one vendor to several vendors? We get competitive bids. Just seems like an awful lot of money. How do we do that?
So, good question. The next document is a document from Mosaic. So Mosaic is who we've used for our capital project the last couple of times. I asked them, they put together a proposal in terms of helping navigate the process. So just like our capital projects, if you guys approve it, we move forward with it, we would use Mosaic, and all of the stuff would be bidded out through the project. Because this project does have to go through SED, get their approval. So just like with the capital project, the board would have to pass a couple of resolutions, you know, that we would then submit to SED, showing that the board is in support of this. It's called like a seat. There's two resolutions. One like a secret resolution that passed. We submit to state ed, and then state ed reviews the projects. We give their approval, and then we move forward. We would then use Mosaic as kind of like the lead in terms of seeking bids and all that for all of these things. And this AVL, they are truly a consultant. They don't sell these stuff. They don't.
This is a cost estimate that they're providing.
Right. They basically
To Mosaic.
Yeah. They basically look and say, here's what we think you need to, you know, do or you should do. Here's what we're seeing as price points. But they are not the vendor. They would say, okay, it goes out to bid, and then, you know, there are a couple that are in the area. There's a Syracuse
Got it.
one, and
Okay.
Queensbury, and whoever, you know, puts in bids for it, you know, we go with the lowest bid, provided that it's what we want.
And Mosaic advises and counsels.
Yeah.
We get this.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
we may not, there's times I've been on projects where bids haven't been submitted, period.
Yeah.
Got it.
I mean, like, or there's a no thank you bid, i.e. like the roof of this fine establishment.
Right.
So, no
It
thank you.
was so
bid.
high, but yes.
Right.
So, you know,
Understood.
we felt this was the first step in this, is giving you this, providing this document, and then just like with the exemptions, if we want to move forward, we would have to do a public hearing, you know, give a 30-day notice, because obviously what we're envisioning is using the repair reserve fund to pay for this. That's where the public hearing, I mean, we can do it, but then we gotta pay back the funds. But it makes more sense to have a public hearing. You guys are approving it publicly or not approving it. And then we move forward with that. So this is, I saw the first step of giving you guys all the information. Here's what it is. Here's the rationale. I mean, I think they rented stuff this year and looking, in the near future, that's the possibility that we don't do the upgrades. We're going to be renting lights going forward because what we currently have is inadequate at this point. Other questions on this?
No, the theater one. And then you have a scoreboard here.
Yeah, I'm gonna jump down. We'll hold off on the cafeteria stuff. I'm gonna jump down to the third line where there's some scoreboard specs there. We've had some issues with our scoreboard. We had to repair the controller during mid-season. A couple games we went without being able to use the scoreboard. The scoreboard in our gymnasium was put in at the last capital project. So you're talking about 20 years ago. John actually believes that it's time to replace it. So one is showing you the specs of what the mock-up would look like. One is, I think, it is also the quotes. There isn't, the quote isn't in here, but basically for the new scoreboard, it's about $23,000. We do have some capital funds, left over from the capital project that we were, like our network upgrades, potentially using this as well. Looking at some risers for the coral group. They need new risers that have backs and all that, kind of for safety reasons. But we have a couple $100,000 left over from the capital project that is sitting there that we can use. So it wouldn't come out of the general fund or anything like that. But we thought there was a need to replace it. It's 20 years old. Time to move on and put a new one in so that we get another 20 years out of this. So I wanted to share that information with you as well. That doesn't need board approval or anything like that in terms of spending the money because the money's already there. The board has already approved that. It's literally leftover funds from our last capital projects.
Was Mosaic the architects on the big capital improvement project?
Yes, our last two projects, Mosaic was.
And we're happy with the job they did?
Yes, we were. I mean, so much so that like back in 2000, when we did the capital project adding the gymnasium, they were brought back for the second one. I mean, they know our building probably as well, if not better than we do, and all that, the drawings and all that. So they were very much easy to reach out to saying, hey, do you have a consultant for auditoriums? I said, here's someone that we've worked with in the past.
Yeah. Just
They're
see what's-
also appointed every year in
Pardon?
July. Mosaic is appointed as our architects every year in
Okay.
July.
We'll be using them. We have a building condition survey that Tim has mentioned that they will be conducting in July. So again, they did our last building condition survey plus our last two capital projects. So we contracted with them to do that as well.
It seems to me that $74,000 fee for most of the work will be done by subcontractors. Not a lot of design criteria to redo the auditorium. It just seems high to me.
Yeah, I mean, they will oversee the entire project,
Yep.
basically. In that regard, helping put it out where, for our perspective, we wouldn't have to do any of that. So they would, put all the paperwork that goes to the SUP as well.
Were they overseeing the roofing contractors that had problems with our roof, didn't they?
Well, actually, no. So for our capital project, we used a we use Schoolhouse
Oh,
Construction
that's
to
right.
be our project manager. So they were actually overseeing the day-to-day. Mosaic was really about the drawings, the
The drawings.
plans, going out for bid, getting,
Got it.
running that
So they
process.
didn't do the construction. then.
They did not.
Okay.
They don't, that's something they don't dabble in. They dabble in the
The
design
plans.
side.
Yeah, I
of
get
it.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, helping with all of our submissions to SED, change orders, all of that.
The typical role.
Yes, is what they do. Schoolhouse, construction, they're the ones that were on site day-to-day, seeing our project, yes.
Okay. Mhm. No more questions.
And the last one is, and I won't go into any great detail on this, is, last week we did have, well, it's supposed to be every 3 years in terms of child nutrition coming in and doing a review of our food service program. They were supposed to come in 2020, but, like everything else, the world shut down. So they came in last week. They basically, they came into the elementary school and they look at, they spend a day reviewing the operations, specifically at the elementary school. They look at our menu for the week and all that. They look at production records, recipes. They look at our submissions for reimbursement for free and reduced lunch. There's a whole, magnitude of information that we provide them ahead of time before they even come. And what you have here is their review. The first page is basically their reports. And then the second part is the corrective action plan, things that we need to do. I met with, Phil and I, we spoke after their review, and really what it came down to is minor stuff that I could have told you before they came here that we needed. All of our recipes that we use need to be in our NutriKit system, for production records and all that. I could have told you that. We've had such a fluctuation with food service directors over the last few years. We haven't had a lot of stability in there. Thankfully, they came now as opposed to 2020 because we actually were without a food service person. So we knew that, yes, our production records need to be kept on a daily basis and all that. And when you look at that last document, it highlights that there was nothing glaring in it in terms of, oh my goodness, we need to shut down your food service program immediately. That's not the case. It's just more document. It's just about documenting everything that we need to do. We've recently updated the letters that we use for free and reduced lunch, which we're technically out of compliance because they want you to follow their templates to a T. They provide the templates. We updated it so that going forward, most updated documents and letters and all that will go out to parents and families. But these are things that we'll be working on to correct over the next few months. So that's when the school year starts next year, will be in place. And hopefully the next time they come in 3 years, we've checked all the boxes off that we're doing it properly.
Any questions on the operations committee? All right. Brings us to information for, thank you, Dave.
Thank you, David.
Information for the board, CA report there. And some information in executive content.
I do want to say that I'm excited to see that someone has made the move to change the verbiage a little bit in regard to attendance that's factored into tenure recommendation. I've brought this up a couple of times in the last 2 or 3 years when, one of the principals will come and do a recommendation for tenure, and there always seems to be so much emphasis put on, the number of sick days that they've been out. And I just feel really strongly it's part of their benefit package. And all it takes is 1 or 2 stomach viruses in the house or the flu to knock out those 15 days pretty quickly when you've got a couple of young children at home or even yourself. So I'm very happy that the verbiage has changed in that. where it focuses more on whether they've used their sick days or not, how effective they are when they're there.
Discuss it there. All right, Tim's tirade.
Yes, let it begin. Hear ye, hear ye. This is the second meeting upon Colleen's request. I've also updated this for reference at your convenience. But as always, March is a madhouse of a month with far more things than I could even shine the light on adequately, but I will attempt. So starting with athletics, we're 6 days away from the start of spring sports, so we're excited for that. We did have some extremely strong performances, both team-wise and individually, on both of our Nordic teams, with our boys team finishing third and our girls Nordic team finishing ninth. And this is in the state, so it's outstanding. I know the coaches were very pleased with that. I'm sure you were there, Mr. Cash.
The ones I can get to, yeah.
The ones you can get to, absolutely. And once again, Andrew Scanio had a great, strong performance, third overall in the individual, and Maya Garrison 10th in the state. So all of our Nordic athletes did an amazing job finishing in the top 25. So congratulations to them and to all of our athletes for a great winter season. Middle high school, last week was the Addams Family. Anyone who got to see it, I'm sure you will agree that it was rife with humor and heartfelt, and it was an excellent job. Taylor Prosper and Sophie Morelli and their co-directorship, Brendan Gotham and his set design did a masterful job. The cast and crew were just wonderful. And so this is the culmination for some of our students who've been in theater for many years. Last year, Andrew Scanio and Nadia Phillip had major roles in Little Mermaid, which was another wonderful production. And they had big roles this time. And we had a few first-time performers in senior class in the musical, which was great. So breaking down some of those traditional niches of athletes only being athletes, and musicians only being musicians. It's really nice to see the infusion there. Winter Carnival, it will be kicking off next Tuesday night, 6 o'clock in the Middle High School Auditorium. Cora Clark will be leading as Grand Marshal. This is the 80th games. And then the following day, the King and Queen will then preside over the games and competitions with an iron-like will. And we're excited for all the games. They're always fun. There's a lip dub competition where each class lip syncs their way into eternal glory. And the staff also feign talent in that area. Grade 10, the DC trip is rapidly approaching. Teresa jokes that she should be called, the official tour guide of Lake Placid. This is the third class this year that's going to go to DC. So I think that would be an apt title for her. But our students, our 10th graders, with the culmination of this trip, the COVID lapse will be a thing of the past. All of our students will have gone on this trip who should have, which is fantastic. Students will see To Kill a Mockingbird in Baltimore. They'll go to Arlington. They'll go to the Smithsonian. They'll take a tour of the mall at night. I went to school in DC, so having lived there for 4 years, cherry blossoms, when you can hit them, I mean, that's the big deal. And this, I don't want to comment on global warming directly. Suffice to say that the blossoms will be had by the students of Lake Placid. So they're on par presently for peak blossoms, which will be amazing. Walking around the Jefferson Memorial, which is my personal favorite. It's beautiful. Tidal Basin. Big shout out to Teresa Lindsay and Keith Clark for planning 2 of these trips this year, bringing 3 classes and doing an outstanding job with it. And of course, the Lucy family for their perpetual generosity to the district with regards to this. It is a seminal experience of a Blue Bomber, and we're immensely grateful to the Lucy's in providing that to our students. From the hallowed halls of Congress to the dark woods of Von Scioto, we travel for a second trip in the Woods program. This time, our female students will be in attendance, and a large contingent of senior girls, all traveling together as something of a culmination of their years in high school, March 25th through March 28th. So we're excited to have that second trip happen, and then we look forward to having some students from the first and second trip come to the board and talk about benefits of heat and a shower, and also additional time in nature. So that's going very well. Broadway Showcase, our high school band and chorus students are preparing for a March 30th fundraiser. It's been successful the past several years. Students provide entertainment on a variety of Broadway tunes that they practice for over weeks, and this funding will directly source the New York City trip the band has avidly been fundraising for the past year and a half. We have a craft fair slated for March 25th that the junior class is hosting. Lots of vendors there, so it's another wonderful community infusion into our halls. And at the middle high school, we're making real inroads on overhauling the schedule. Last year, as the board is well aware, we created a unified schedule for the arrival and departure times for students. Now we're looking at each building, ensuring that the specific period length of classes represents the particular class. It's really a reflection of our values to some degree. The longer a class period, the more opportunity for application in the class with knowledge. And so moving from a 40-minute to a 55-minute period, building in a 10-minute homeroom that has not been as long this last year, but having dedicated character education time for our students is so important. A big push on citizenship in our district and career mindedness that we can embed through that homeroom time. Our science labs presently do not take place in the school day to a full degree. Some do, but others happen in 10th period, activity period, which is an optional period. And those who are involved in sports are looking at Erlenmeyer flasks through when they can attend to them, just due to the nature of their extracurricular obligations. So a major priority is getting our science labs in the school day. It's long overdue for our department. And then also, we've spent a lot of time in the district looking at our efficiency and making sure that we balance exceptional quality for our students and great offerings with efficient mindedness in respect to the ongoing costs of maintaining our staff as our population has dwindled over the past 20 years. And so one of the moves that we think will be impactful is having a 4-year rotation of elective classes. So students, when they meet with their guidance counselor in 8th grade and they plan out 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th grade, they know when the electives are, so they can attend to those in a reasonable fashion. The existing model is sort of a buffet, and depending on when people choose to consume the classes at that buffet, it ties up staff members away from core instructional classes, which doesn't necessarily speak to the level of efficiency that we know we need to have as a district. So those are all great things, and kudos to our guidance team, Connie Haymaker and Lynn Gosling, for doing the early stages of putting this into action. The elementary school family math night occurred. It was wonderful. I was in attendance. There were over 55 students there, 100 total guests, dozens of students also working with staff members to provide learning stations. And this was really the brainchild of the math department leaders. So thank you so much to Haley Framonti, our 6th through 12th math department leader. Thank you to Amy Kramer, K through 5, and all of our elementary and middle high school math teachers. And Mr. Clark was there with fruit snacks and raisins. And what more could you ask for? So it was a great night. We recently had Bomber Day, which is a celebration of our district values and character education at the elementary school. And students could do snow art with colored water and water bottles, sledding, tug of war, limbo, snowshoeing, building with blocks, hikes, dance parties, and hot cocoa. What more could you ask for? On the district level, our adult education classes have exceeded our expectations, both in numbers of participants and in the quality of the offerings. We've had over 60 community members register to participate in painting, dancing, or cooking classes. And just anecdotally looking at the registrants, people from all walks of life. And it is so refreshing to hold that mantle for our community that we can offer that. And the benefit is, we log the email addresses of these community members, and we will continue to communicate with them about future opportunities to amplify our projects. This is a wonderful opportunity for the district. Our strategic plan continues to barrel forward. We have additional shared leadership in this regard. We have an innovation task force that's being co-facilitated by Keith Clark, and we have a well-being task force that's being co-facilitated by Amanda Cash. So big thanks to them and all of the members on those task forces, all working diligently so that we can have an actionable 5-year strategic plan for the board's consideration at the end of this school year. And of course, everyone's favorite part, we're pleased to announce that an audit from the comptroller's office is coming. Tomorrow, Dana and I have the privilege of sitting down with a representative from that office. This is in essence a 2-year hiatus when the comptroller's office indicated that the district was up for its regular routine oversight, and through the backlog of work from the pandemic, it is only now that we're going to have this happen. But we have an outstanding business office and we follow our board policies closely. So I'm confident that this will be a very easy process thanks to the due diligence of our business office. And last but not least, we've spent a lot of time talking about academic data in the district over the past couple of years, certainly with the concerns about the COVID lapse and any loss that has taken place. And one of the big things that administratively has come up time and again is that you can analyze all the data you want, but if you have 10 different sources of data, there are so many factors in that can negate the actual impact and utility of that data, that at some point it renders some of these sources of data moot. What we really need is a single source of data that we could log from K to 12 for our students that'll measure their academic growth in math, ELA, and science. And when students go from the elementary school to the middle high school, they're not going to take a new testing system they're going to follow that. And you can go back and see growth as a teacher all the way back to kindergarten. And more importantly, now that I'm in the parent game here, my son got his pre-K report card not too long ago, and I immediately put that lens on of, hey, so what does this report card for my son mean? Like I understand that means certain skills, but how as a parent can I seek to engage him and improve his skills? And I want our district parents to have that opportunity when they receive a report card, that it's not a number that is based on an individual teacher's estimation of a student's knowledge, that with that are specific skills that you can articulate to a parent, and they can sit down at the dinner table with their child and say, you need to work on your spelling words that end with, ES, because this was indicated in your tracking report. And so to have those types of reports that we can share with our report cards is going to create the kind of feedback that will generate, I think, real growth for our students. So that's the intent of this program. And hopefully it will be more impactful than it's been presented to us, but initially we're excited. That's my report. That's my tirade.
And I will just say, I would reiterate your thanks to the Lucy family, and also I think to the administrative leadership that made the decision to make sure that we didn't just start up the trip again and it's like, well, tough cookies to those who missed out, but to make sure that every one of those grades had an opportunity to go on that trip. I think that is I just think that's great. I was trying to go on something better to say, but I just think it's great. Talk about putting students first. That's what it's all about right there. So. All right.
Tim, thanks so much for putting that in written form. I just think it's really helpful. At least for me, I could follow along with you. And later, if I want to go back and look at all of your, awesome to-do things, I can go back and reflect again.
Appreciate that.
Okay. 7A is, I'm sorry. Any other comments or questions? Don't want to push us along too fast. All right, 7A is in consent. And that brings us to 8A. Recommended action upon the recommendation of the superintendent, Cameron Shipman is hereby granted tenure in the area of teaching assistant on March 19, 2023. Ms. Shipman holds a level 3 teaching assistant certification. Do I have a motion?
Yes,
Thank you, Colleen. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
All right, sorry.
That's all right.
It's the time zone change.
It is. Oh, well, sorry.
Next time.
Yep.
Any discussion? If not, please vote.
Five yes.
All right, passes. Congratulations, Cameron, or sorry, Ms. Ship. Mixing up first names and last names today. I think I called Mr. Brill, Mr. Dale, but you know.
He knew he was called upon.
You know, things that-
Okay, so thank you, everybody. 8B was in consent. Thank you to all of our coaches this year.
So I apologize. I used last year's salary number. That's what we did.
Yes. So thank them again. Appropriate notes. Okay, so that takes us to 9A, the Read Across America Proclamation. Recommended action approve the NEA's Read Across America Proclamation, March 2023, as per the attached. Do I have this in it? Here it is. Or read the proclamation. Whereas the school board of Lake Placid Central Schools stand firmly committed to promoting reading as a catalyst for our students' future academic success, their preparation for America's jobs of the future, and their ability to compete in the global economy. And whereas the Lake Placid Central Schools have provided significant leadership in the area of community involvement in the education of our youth, grounded in the principle that education investment is key to the community's well-being and long-term quality of life. And whereas the NEA's Read Across America, a national celebration of reading in March 2023 promotes reading and adult involvement in the education of our community students. Therefore, be it resolved that the school board of Lake Placid Central Schools calls on the citizens of Lake Placid and Wilmington to ensure that every child is in a safe place reading together with a caring adult every day. And be it further resolved that this body enthusiastically endorses NEA's Read Across America and recommits our community to engage in programs and activities to make America's children the best readers in the world. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Ron.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Colleen.
If you get an opportunity to watch the video, the kickoff video, it's cute.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, it's in the board box.
All right. So we're on the 7th day of March here.
5 yes.
Thank you, everybody. 9C, sorry, 9B is Music in Our Schools Proclamation. Another fun one. Here we go. The recommended action approved the Music in Our Schools month for the month of March 2023 as per the attached. Now, whereas for more than 30 years, March has been officially designated the National Association of Music Education, NAFME, as Music in Our Schools Month. No, I'm just going to stop. My awesome. Encouraging communities across the nation to focus on musical education. And whereas the music education is part of the well-rounded education for every student as outlined in the Every Student Succeeds Act. And whereas the purpose of this celebration is to raise awareness of the lasting positive impact of music education on the academic, personal, and professional growth of our students. And whereas music education shapes the way our students understand themselves and the world around them, allowing for deep engagement with learning. And whereas Music in Our Schools Month reminds us that school is where all is where all children should have access to music, and whereas music educators, students, and communities throughout Lake Placid Central School District demonstrate the importance of quality music education programs to the lives of young people, and whereas the Lake Placid Central School Board of Education joins our music students, educators, and communities in celebrating the power of music education. Now, therefore, the Lake Placid Central School Board of Education does hereby proclaim March 2023 as Music in Our Schools Month and encourages all citizens to celebrate and acknowledge every day, especially in March, that music education is an essential part of every student's well-rounded education. Do I have a motion?
Yes.
Thank you, Colleen. Second? Thank you, Doug. Any discussion, questions? Anybody want to take a crack at reading that again?
Good job.
Okay, I should delegate. All depends on how bad the floaters are that day, eyesight.
Maybe some accents.
So, yeah. All right, please vote. There's no question.
Are you all not getting the thing?
Yeah, I'm not getting it.
Do you want to vote and I'll just mark it?
Aye.
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 Okay. Thank you. 5 yes.
Okay, 9C. Recommended action, be it resolved that the Board of Education hereby approves the following proposition to be added to the ballot May 16, 2023 budget vote. Resolved, shall the trustees of the Lake Placid Central School District be authorized to lease one 24 passenger school wheelchair bus and one 8-passenger school bus for a period not to exceed 5 years at the cost not to exceed $40,732 per year. Do I have a motion?
I'll motion.
Thank you, Doug, and second, Colleen.
Board docs kicked me out,
Uh-oh.
so we're gonna have to do some manual stuff. Sorry,
All right,
was it Colleen and Doug?
Doug and Colleen. Colleen, Scott.
Okay, do you want to vote?
Sure. Any questions, comments? All right, let's vote. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it.
Aye.
5 yes.
Next is 9D, recommended action motion to add the proposition of the E.M. Cooper Memorial Library to the May 17, 2022-23 ballot. I'm guessing.
Yeah, this should be for this existing ballot. That's it.
What?
It says May 17th, 2022 ballot.
Oh, yes. So.
So we just put a note to
it's-
change that.
Yes.
As read, yeah.
As read
Change.
to the May 16th, 2023
Right.
ballot as follows. Shall the trustees of the Lake Placid Central School District adopt the funding for the E.M. Cooper Memorial Library, which is raised by an annual levy of tax upon the taxable real property with the Lake Placid Central School District, the increase from $15,470 to $16,090. Do I have a motion?
Yes.
Yes.
Different numbers. Letter, it says increased from 16,090 to 16,735.
Oh, so that's.
Oh, I
also
didn't change it at all then.
All
Okay,
right.
so,
Last year's resolution, yeah.
oh, so, yeah. I'm so
So-
sorry.
So Lake Placid School District will be increased from
I
16,090
think-
to 16,735.
Correct.
Catch up. So I'll keep you around.
Numbers.
Sorry.
All right, now do I have a motion?
Yes.
Lane and Colleen's got this. Please vote.
I,
Hi.
Aye.
9E special education was in consent, which brings us down into linking goals with agenda items. I think I'll go ahead and reiterate what I said about including all the COVID lapse DC trip. That was very enriching for the students that missed that. So I think that was great on putting students first and foremost.
I think we hit most of the bullets just listening to Tim's superintendent report, to be honest.
Yeah, really took us around.
Great.
You're on the board.
Checking all the boxes.
Tim, you covered a lot of ground in a short period of time. Well done.
So did you notice in there, I put in what we've done to date?
Oh, on the,
I
yes.
added, yes, so I went and I printed the report out. So it shows what you've completed so
Oh.
far.
Okay, any additional ones, please send them to Karen. That brings us to our second, we go to the cause section. Do we have any messages,
I
emails?
do not.
Okay, thank you. And now the adjournment phase of the meeting, everybody's here, of course. You'll see the next meeting date and location, March 21st. Will be a 5:30 PM budget work session before the meeting. And then we will have the April 18th meeting after spring break. Because we have some budget business that we have to get done before deadline. So, and then coming up too is the BOCES budget vote on the 25th, and then we'll be in Wilmington for the public hearing, correct?
Correct.
So on
For the
May
first
2nd.
public hearing.
Yes. Great, all right. Any old agenda topics? Nope, any new agenda topics?
Nope.
Okay, then, recommend action, motion to adjourn the meeting. Do I have a motion?
I move it.
Thank you, Ron. Do I have a second?
I will.
Oh, I saw Colleen's hand go first. Sorry.
All right.
All right, we will join, everyone in favor? Aye.
Aye.
We'll adjourn the meeting at 7:53 PM. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Dan.
Thanks, guys. Have a
Thank you.
good one.
Have a good evening.
You too. Bye, Colleen. Bye-bye.
Hi, Colleen. It looks beautiful out there. I see palm trees in the background.
And sunshine. Yeah, it is. It's nice.
Enjoy.